What's up everybody, Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2019 Kia Niro EV. Huge thanks to Kia for flying me all the way out here to Santa Cruz, California to review the all new EV version of the Niro for you guys today. So about the Niro EV, well, fully electric, you know, they have the regular hybrid and plug-in hybrid versions of the Niro already, but this is fully electric and is very cool looking here. Of course, the main signature trait here of the electric version is they closed off that grille since you don't need the airflow there, since there is no engine under this hood here, just an electric motor. And they also have some nice blue accents here to differentiate it from the regular Niros as well, such as the blue accents in the headlamps there, which are LED here in the top trim version and look good, although you do have a standard LED running lamp there. Other LEDs you'll see going down to the lower part of the front bumper there, you'll see the arrow-like LED arrangement as well as fog lights, which are LED as well. And you have some more blue accenting down there as well. And so it makes for a very streamlined and very cool and futuristic looking front end while still having a conventional car shape. Obviously, like the regular Niro, you know, it's not trying to be anything too wild or futuristic. And so I think a lot of people will appreciate that familiarity instead of having something that's too radical. The one really cool thing though about the front end of the Niro as well is the charging port is right there in the front grille, which is really handy, you know, if you're pulling into a parking spot to charge, instead of having, you know, a lot of other vehicles have the charging ports way back by the normal fuel door, and if you're not wanting to back into a spot every time you want to charge, this is nice. You just pull in, you know, forwards instead, plug it right into the front there, nice and easy. You don't have to run cords down the whole side of the vehicle or anything, and I think that's a really cool inclusion to have it right up front there. Coming down to the side of the Niro EV here, you have the plastic body cladding, which is a signature thing for crossovers and gives us a pseudo crossover, you know, setup. It has a little bit of a higher ride height as well, so that also helps give it this crossover type of look. You also have these unique 17-inch wheels for the EV version of the Niro, and these streamlined wheels help it to have better efficiency, better airflow down the sides here, and so that's an interesting, unique thing. Gives a little bit of a taller sidewall here since you have the 17s, but I think those actually look pretty good. Again, for an electric vehicle, fits in with the theme of this a lot. And then going down to the back there, you'll see standard LED tail lamps, and then it's also just, you know, a nice square shape without being super boxy like some other crossovers, but still has a very usable amount of cargo space because of the more conventional shape of the hatch there. You also see more blue accenting there along the lower part of the rear bumper, as well as badges there for, you know, the Eco Electric to signify this is the full EV version. And so overall, I think it's a pretty good look. Whereas for the interior of the Niro EV, well, it is a very nice place to be, actually. A lot of really cool, unique stuff here in the EV version. So anyway, first thing, sitting down in these seats, that is one thing. As you can see, the blue theme continues on here with the blue piping, the blue stitching, which is a really cool shade of blue too. I really like it. I also love the design of the perforation here in the seats, which is needed because these seats are standard heated and ventilated here in all EV versions of the Niro, which is a really great standard feature. And they're very comfortable seats too. They're very nice and soft, supple leather here that feels really great. And they have really nice bolstering too, actually, for the torso support. It's not too snug, but a little bit sportier than what you normally get in a crossover of this type. And also thigh support is pretty good too, although it's a little bit wider. Certainly will be comfortable for basically all body types, I think. But really just actually really good seats. I'm really impressed with them. Next is the steering wheel here in the Niro EV, which is basically the same as most other Kias with one big exclusion, and that is these paddle shifters here on the back, which affect the regen. And so there's 4 different levels of regen, and you can toggle that here with the paddle shifters, which is really cool. And I also like the metal look that they have, although they are plastic. Otherwise though, the steering wheel, I love the blue stitching you have. Has a really great 9-3 grip, nice little 10-2 notches that are actually a little bit beefier than I was expecting too. One thing though, you know, you have this standard assortment of buttons here like you see on any other Kia for the steering wheel here, but these little toggles in some other Kias have like a metal look to them. These ones just stick with being plastic, which is okay. It just makes it look a little less expensive than some of the other Kia, you know, steering wheels that have those looking like metal. Even if they aren't real metal, they have a little bit of a nicer finish than this one does. But otherwise, it's just a nicely, you know, a little bit of smaller wheel and just feels really good to use. Gauges here in the EV version of the Niro are also very cool. I really love the way way they set it up. Because it's, you know, some other EVs, it's very busy and a little confusing sometimes. There's a lot of information in a lot of them. This one has nicely simplified everything. So of course you have just a nice large digital speedometer there on the right. On the left hand side you have just your range readout, and they also have a little bar style you know, readout there for it as well if you want more like a traditional fuel gauge. And then you have that pretty large center screen there, which is a really nice setup. I really love how, you know, you have a power and charge meter, which will fluctuate depending on, you know, whether you're on the gas or off, and how much regen you're using, and all that kind of stuff is very simple and easy to understand there in that nice little readout there. And that look will also change depending on what drive mode you're in. So if you're in sport mode, it gets red, and you see more of a focus on the power side of the gauge, you know, cluster there. And then if you go to the eco, then it's a little more softer looking. And just so it's very cool that they kind of have it custom tailored for each of the drive modes there. Adds a little bit of extra excitement, especially whenever you're in sport mode. There are a couple unique things as well here for the gauge cluster for that middle screen. So you'll see the driving style, which will show you economical, normal, and aggressive, kind of grade you on, you know, how eco driving you are, which is kind of a fun little thing to see. There's also an energy flow little diagram there that will be animated whenever you're driving. And then there's consumption info, and then you'll have, you know, just the other basic settings and stuff here. So not a ton of stuff. It would be nice if they included some media info or something like that, but no Kias do that. You know, so this is kind of still the same bones as all the other center screens and all these other Kias, and it's good, but these days it would be nice to have a little more info shown there. Would be kind of nice, but not a huge deal. And so overall, just really cool gauges. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, right up top, you have this 8-inch infotainment screen. So that's part of the EX Premium trim. Otherwise, you get a 7-inch screen in the regular EX version of the Niro. Those are the only two trims currently. And so they are still the same setup and the same, you know, software. It's just a 1-inch larger screen, so not a huge deal. But tied into this EX Premium, you also get the 8-speaker Harman Kardon stereo. But anyway, getting back to this screen here, most of the same basic setup as what you see in any other Kia with this Uvo infotainment system. Has navigation here, and that is standard on all Niros as well for the EV version, is navigation, because they want to tie that into the EV charging stations, helping you to make sure you have enough range for your route and all that kind of stuff. And so that's when you go into this EV setting, and then you'll see all kinds of you know, stuff in here information wise as far as battery setup, when you want to charge it, where, you know, show you a whole list of all the local nearby charging stations, and it'll, you know, give you just about everything you want to know about your route if you're planning some type of road trip, and, you know, how much you need to charge and where you need to stop and all that kind of stuff. So very handy to have all that. It'll also, you can tweak settings for preheating, so you can schedule it to preheat itself before you come out to, you know, drive your car home from work, or, you know, in the morning. Stuff like that is very cool to have all that. And you can also, of course, program when it charges overnight at your house and stuff like that. So very cool to have all that in there. Otherwise, though, it still is the same basic, you know, radio setup and stuff. It has standard Sirius satellite radio, AM, FM, all that kind of stuff. And also has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard here with all Kias, which is great as well. And so that allows you, of course, you won't have the advantage of showing the EV stations and stuff with CarPlay or Android Auto unless you use a map software that has that, but still is nice to be able to control if you want to just use your normal map setup, Waze, things like that. You can use all that with this as well. And then right beneath the screen here, you have a few hard buttons here for shortcuts to those radio you know, functions and things like that. You also have a volume and a tune knob, which is great since that's not a given these days. Some vehicles only have one or neither, and so for this to have both is really great. Coming down, you have standard automatic climate control here as well, which is custom tailored as well for the EV version. You can have a driver only setting here if you're driving by yourself, and that kind of lessens the impact of the you know, on the batteries here with running the air conditioning and stuff. And all the knobs and buttons have a pretty nice feel, you know, right in line with any other Kia, which is pretty good these days. And then coming down, you have a standard wireless charging pad. That's another nice standard feature in all EV versions of the Niro. But my only critique with the wireless charging pad is it really goes way far back there. And so that's good because it means your phone doesn't slide around. It's a very secure spot, but it is very far back there. So basically, if you want to have your phone wirelessly charging, you want to make sure that you're going to be leaving it there for a while. If you want to look at it, you can't really see see your phone or any notifications or anything, and it is a little bit of a reach, so it's a little bit of a struggle to get it out quickly, you know. So, but I mean, when you're driving, you shouldn't be looking at it or messing with it anyway, but even if you're stopped or something, you know, it's a little bit of a reach to go back there and get it. But that's my only critique with that, but nice that it's standard for sure. And then you have 2 USB jacks here, one for, you know, infotainment stuff, and then the other one is just strictly charging. And then you also have a traditional power outlet there as well. And then this whole center console is completely different than the non-EV versions of the Niro. You have this unique gear shift knob here, which is new and very cool. And you'll also see your heated and cooled seat controls there, as well as your drive mode selector. But then you have this whole wide open center console area, which is just massive. I mean, you could fit small purses and things like that in there, or you can fit, you know, just anything you want to toss in there. And then coming back, that's just the start of the storage spaces here. Coming back, you also have this large cup holder area, and you might say, well, where is the borders for the cup holders? Because you just have these 2 round spots here, but it wouldn't hold in a drink. But then you hit these little buttons, and then it just pops right out. It's almost like, these I think are the coolest cup holders I've ever seen in my life. I mean, that is so cool. It makes you feel like it's like a James Bond gadget or something. You hit that and bing, it just comes right out. And they're very secure and snug, so it holds in your drink well. Unlike some other temporary cup holder solutions some other manufacturers have with fold out things, this is very solid, and so it makes for very good cup holders, as well as, you know, nicely getting out of the way if you want to use this as just another storage bin. If for some reason the other front one wasn't large enough, but that is really great to have all that space there. And then coming back, you have the center armrest, which is pretty softly padded, not super soft, but does have a little bit of padding on it and feels pretty nice to rest your elbow on. More of this cool blue stitching as well on that. And then you open that up and you'll see another USB jack in there, again only for charging on that one, and another, you know, traditional typical sized center cubby opening there, which is pretty good on its own already. But that combined with this huge cup holder area that's very usable, and also the forward thing, I mean, you have a ton of storage space in here. Also in the doors, you have a nice pocket with a bottle holder as well, which is great. And so, I mean, storage is fantastic for a vehicle of this size, even compared with other, you know, crossovers and SUVs in this size range. And this is still, I think, far and away ahead of most of those. And so an excellent amount of storage space here in the Niro EV. Backseat space in the Niro EV is also pretty good. So I'm 5'9", and me sitting behind myself, I have about 4 inches of legroom to spare, plenty of headroom there as well, and they're also very nice, soft, comfortable back seats as well. I mean, some of the softest, most comfortable back seats I've sat in a good while, I think, honestly. Very nice and comfortable, and I think it's a good amount of space too. You know, you look at some of the competitors out there in this segment, they're a little more scrunched, especially in the EV segment when there's fewer options. I think this is one of the more spacious ones. I think there's definitely more legroom back there than what you get in like the Kona EV, where that's a little bit of a shorter wheelbase and a little bit of a smaller vehicle actually with the Kona. So this, you get a little bit extra length, and so I think the rear seat passengers really benefit from that. And you don't really feel like you're sitting up too much higher, you know, to make room for any battery packs or anything. Feels like a pretty normal seating position back there. You have a pretty low transmission tunnel area there, and also when you look forward, you'll see 2 dedicated air vents back there as well. No USB jacks back there. That is the only thing that would be kind of nice to include, but not a big deal. You'll also find bottle holders in the doors there, which are nicely shaped, and also a fold down center armrest with 2 cup holders built into it. And also those rear seats do fold flat, so, you know, very versatile, so you can make the most of that hatched room in the back. Speaking of cargo space in the back there, though, it is really good and spacious for, again, a vehicle of this size. A little more space, certainly, than what you get in the Kona, again, because of this longer length of the Niro, and this longer wheelbase really helps. And you don't really have any kind of compromises because of the battery packs either. So, I mean, you have a nice flat and normal cargo area there, and so that makes for a nice flat load floor when you fold down those rear seats. But also underneath the floor there, you open that up and you see some pretty large cubbies. Now, they're not large enough to fit, you know, groceries or anything like that, I don't think, but still nice to kind of hide away some things you want to keep out of sight there. And so that's great to have. And then if you even open up beneath that foam area there, that's where you'll see all your charging cables and stuff that you can store in there very nicely. And so a good amount of cargo space here, and I think even better than some other normal, even competing crossover stuff like the Mazda CX-3 and things like that, have much less cargo space than this does. And then, you know, considering you have batteries that they're hiding in the floor doors there. I mean, to have as much as you do here for an EV makes it really outstanding, I think. And so a very usable cargo area back there, and you know, one of the best in this segment, I think. All right, so let's turn it on and go for a drive. So the Niro EV here has a normal key, just like any other Kia, really, with some nice metal filling buttons here on the back. A nice slim key, you know, just plastic though, you know, a little bit lighter, but still a pretty nice key. And of course, it's keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start here. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the power button, and it turns right on. All right, so setting off in the Kia Niro EV. So first thing you notice, well, I think the first thing that I notice is throttle response is decent, but it is a little bit more of a delay. I think that's partially because of it trying to, you know, be more economical, so that you're not just doing jackrabbit starts constantly, but it is still very punchy. And then once you do, you know, go beyond that little bit of a breaking point, then that's where it really kicks on and gives you that torque from these batteries that's pretty powerful and feels good. Other things to note here, though, of course, it is very, very quiet because you don't have any engine or anything, and it's also pretty well insulated, where I'm not hearing too much of the outside, so that, you know, you're not hearing a ton of tire noise so far or wind noise. We'll see whenever we go up to some higher speeds if that changes, but at least around town here, it's very quiet. Even, you know, compared to some other electric vehicles, like the Bolt had a little more noise to me in my brief drive of that. There's also, you can hear, this electric whirring sound a little bit, and it makes a pedestrian warning noise at some higher low speeds as well. And so that's kind of cool too, because it just gives you this very futuristic feeling to it whenever you're cruising around at lower speeds here. But it really is amazing just how much you can point and shoot with this EV powertrain. I mean, you can find little gaps in traffic and it's a point and shoot type of thing. And I mean, you have a ton of power here. I'm gonna be doing a full little 0 to 60 run here in a minute, but I mean, just for the specs right off the bat here, it has 201 horsepower, 291 pound-feet of torque, 291 pound-feet. I mean, that's higher than a lot of really sporty stuff, and so it means that this thing flies and gets up to speed very, very quick. Now we're on the highway at highway speeds here, and you do hear a little bit more noise. You know, it's not going to be quite as refined as some really high-end luxury cars or anything like that, but again, we are in a Kia that's going to be, you know, somewhere in the mid $30,000 range, so totally reasonable, and still, again, so much quieter than if you were to have an engine running while you're going down the highway as well. So it feels really good. Another thing here while we're at some highway speeds is it's just a nice cruiser. It has a nice smooth ride here. Now, we're not on rough roads or anything yet, but you know, just a very, very compliant, very smooth, great, you know, daily driver with the way the ride is set up. Visibility is also excellent here in the Niro. So, you know, you have a nice large windshield. The dashboard drops down nicely. You have a little bit of a higher seating position, again, trying to be more of a crossover type setup. So that makes it very easy to see forward. You have pretty thin A-pillars, although you do have this little block off area here since the mirror is attached to the A-pillar. So that's the only thing that isn't ideal, but you're sitting up high enough and the A-pillar is already still thin enough that it's not a problem whatsoever. You have nice large side windows too. They kind of did this design so that it has a 1/3 to 2/3 profile, so that, you know, the windows are 1/3 of this whole height of the vehicle. And so, I mean, nice large windows. You have a great view out of the back as well too, since we have a pretty square and normal hatchback shape and it's not too rakish or anything. So that makes it really good to see out of as well. And so it makes for a very easy driving experience. But another thing I want to mention, of course, since this is an EV, one of the main things people are interested in is the range and the battery pack. So it has a 64 kilowatt hour battery pack here, and it has range quoted at 239 miles of range. Now, it's, you know, that's what the EPA is, but as I hopped in this vehicle, it started out with 252 miles showing with a full charge, and now after driving for several miles already, it's now just telling me 239 miles. So, you know, I'll be driving this around all day, and so I'll kind of test out how the range is affected and, you know, how well it does. But, you know, I mean, that's enough range that you don't have to charge it every day on a normal commute. You could, you know, or if you want, you can always kind of top it off every day and always leave your house with a full charge. But if you don't want to bother of plugging it in. You could go several days, you know, with most people's average commutes of, you know, a couple dozen miles or so. You know, this would be totally sufficient. And then as far as recharge times, so if you want to do a fast recharge, you can get 100 miles of charge in 30 minutes, which is pretty good. And then if you want to do an 80% charge with the level 2 DC fast charger, you can get about 80% range from 0 to 80% in about 75 minutes. Now, if you were to connect it to a normal 240 volt, slower charging, that takes about 9.5 hours to go from 0 to 100%. And that would be, again, like at your home, where you plug it into an outlet, kind of like a dryer or something like that, another appliance outlet. You know, that's where you would get that slower charging time. But the DC fast charging, I mean, you know, 100 miles extra range in 30 minutes. You stop, get some lunch, you got an extra 100 miles to go, something like that. It's very convenient. So, I mean, obviously, it's not going to be as quick as, you know, maybe some of the, you know, Teslas and stuff like that as far as charge times, but it still was very good. And, you know, they're expanding the network of charging stations here with these DC fast chargers all over, so that it is going to enable you to be able to do road trips and stuff like that without having to stop too much extra. Obviously, it's still not going to be as quick of a refill time as a gas engine, but still, you know, they've gotten really a lot better with these charge times. And again, because of that high range, especially, you know, if you're not going to use this as a road trip vehicle, it'd be totally sufficient. You know, you plug it in every night, whenever you get home from work, whatever, you will never have to worry about your range. It's also, steering feels pretty good too, of course, fully electric steering here. And so there's not a ton of feel, but it is very precise, and it's actually nicely weighted as well to me, so that it's not quite as light as some normal crossovers. It has a nice little bit of a resistance to it, but it's not overkill or too sporty or anything, but nicely set up here. And this is also all in the normal mode. So if we go over to the sport mode, which it does have, then throttle response gets much punchier. Also, you have the torque wanting to jump in way quicker, and so you'll see it going into the power range whenever you're on the gauge cluster here. I mean, it'll give you the full power way earlier on the gas pedal. So if you drive one of these for the first time and the throttle response isn't what you want in normal mode, sport mode here fixes that immediately. It makes it feel really punchy. All right, so I'm gonna put it up into the sport mode here. And let's turn down onto this back road and see how it does. And here we go. All right. Takes off. Got traction control lighting up on me a little bit there, and man, this thing flies. That was way quicker than it probably looked, especially since it's completely silent here. But man, this thing, it just rockets. It feels way faster than its quoted 0 to 60 time. 0 to 62, the Kia claims 7.8 seconds. No way is that slow. It is at least a mid 6 second vehicle. I mean, I looked at how long it took me to get up to speed there, and this to me feels certainly quicker than that. It's at least, I mean, this feels punchier than even like a GTI or something. So that kind of puts into perspective the kind of power we're dealing with here. Again, 201 horsepower, 291 pound-feet of torque. I mean, that's more than, you know, like a lot of these turbo 4-cylinder engines, even in some of the higher tuned ones. A lot of even hot hatches don't have that much torque in their top trim version. So I mean, this is punchy, especially in sport mode here. It really loves to take off, and I love the little electric whine or whir you have. It's just fun. This is so much fun, and you have no turbo to wait around for like you do in stuff like the the Forte GT now, or it used to be the Forte 5SX, and some of these other turbocharged engines within Kia and Hyundai have you've got to wait around for the turbo a little bit, and that's fun as well. But this instant power is just a riot to use, and so it's really makes for an entertaining driving experience. I mean, anytime you're just kind of cruising along, you want to just blast off, it's just immediate. You feel a front end lift up, and I'm really impressed too that considering this is a front wheel drive vehicle, to be able to manage that power. I mean, I don't know when that full 291 pound-feet of torque comes on. I'm sure it's not in the very, very low speeds there, but it's also immediate because you have no downshifts to wait around for. Again, with these EVs, it's just direct drive basically, so there isn't any transmission or anything you're waiting for. You just point and shoot, and it goes immediately. So in comparison to turbocharged vehicles with transmissions, there is so much more delay than this, where it's immediate. There is no thinking about it. There is no dilly-dallying. It just immediately goes, and it's so much fun. It just feels so punchy. And it's really deceiving, though, too, because since you don't have all the sounds or any drama in that regard, the only drama you have is the G-forces, which does feel very fast, but it allows you to be able to kind of go a little quicker than you might even want to go. And see, I just had a little bit of a hill there where I lost contact with the tires a little bit there, and it wanted to spin those wheels. I think the traction control system in this must be very well tuned to desperately try and keep those front tires gripping well with this much power. I don't know how they're doing it while still making it feel as responsive and as quick as it does, but this thing is fun. Now, you do drain a lot of your battery if you do go driving around like this. I started whenever I just started this acceleration run. I had 229 miles of range, and now I'm down to 214 after just a few minutes here, as you've seen of me kind of getting on it a little bit. So that, you know, will certainly be a type of driving style that you can't sustain very much, but I mean, how often are you going to be bombing down a back road on your daily commute? I mean, some people will, but even still, you have 239 miles at least of range to work with, and so, you know, because of that, I don't think you're going to ever have to worry about not having enough range, you know, in your normal daily driving activities. Let's even just try from a standstill here, see how it does. Here we go. Yeah, it's it takes off. Now, it's not as immediate as like a Tesla or something where you're not going to get motion sickness flooring it in this thing. It's not as insane as that, but it also has less power than those do. So compared to, you know, other comparable EVs, it feels, you know, very much the same as a lot of, you know, stuff like the Bolt has a similar power level to it. And it is impressive. And then you can kind of regain some of that charge whenever you get back on those brakes. You see the regenerative braking loading up on electricity there while you're doing that. So that's really cool. And then, of course, you know, you can, again, play with these paddles to increase or decrease the regenerative braking as well, however you know how it would best suit the roads you're driving on. Like now we're going down a little bit of a grade here, so I can kind of crank up regenerative braking and kind of maintain my speed or slightly slow down, and then once it levels out like it is now, I can get rid of the regenerative braking if I want. And so it's kind of cool to play around with these paddles. It's kind of a fun little game to kind of maximize your efficiency whenever you don't want to fly around. If you want to hypermile it, you can kind of maximize your efficiency with that and be constantly tweaking that regenerative braking for the exact road conditions you're on at that moment. So it's a different type of fun, of course. You know, there isn't any sound, any kind of traditional drama with the banging in of, you know, gears and upshifts and downshifts, or you know, of course, the sound and the power curve, you know, of waiting for power and having different types of power delivery with different types of gasoline engines. So this is different, but it is still fun. I really am enjoying playing with these paddles to maximize my efficiency. That's really cool. I am enjoying, you know, the immediate torque. It's just a different type of fun. But, you know, with more and more EVs coming onto the scene these days, and this clearly being the way that everyone's going for the future here, it's just going to be a different type of fun, but I think that it is still very much fun. And anyone who's skeptical, just take one for a test drive, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with just how much this is actually fun to drive, and again, handles very well. Even though you're on these, you know, mileage tires that are supposed to, you know, have low rolling resistance and stuff, I'm still having pretty good grip around these corners here. I haven't had a want of grip, really. There hasn't been any point in time where I'm, like, you know, losing or understeering or losing traction or anything. It still stays really well planted and makes it feel pretty competent. Again, you're sitting up a little higher and it's a little softer in its spring setup. So that's just, you know, one of the things that comes with a crossover type vehicle like this. So totally understandable, but I mean, even compared to other crossovers, it still handles very well despite this vehicle's heavier weight. These weigh 3,854 pounds according to Kia. So, you know, weighty for a vehicle of this size, but still not, you know, super heavy compared to a lot of other crossovers, even in this segment. Other handling things to note, well, braking is very good here, actually. You know, with electric vehicles, sometimes it's a little weird with the regen and stuff, but this has a very natural brake feel, which I really appreciate. But yes, that's about all I can gather here from the Niro EV, from my first few minutes of driving, of course. But I'm going to be driving around all day today, and I'll come back and give you guys my final thoughts on it. Alright, so I've spent the whole day here with the Niro EV, and it's just a really nice thing to drive. I think the independent rear suspension you get here in the EV version 2 really just gives it a very soft, supple ride while still having excellent handling, and it would be such a great daily driver. Again, for most people that just commute back and forth, don't go on road trips very often, you know, something like this would really be perfect. You save so much money on fuel, obviously, but you know, with just paying for the little bit you have to pay for charging, it would really save you a lot of money. And also, in addition to all the money you'll save on gas, you also save a bunch not paying for oil changes. You don't need any of those, most of those maintenances like you do in a gasoline-powered vehicle. And so, you know, all those things, obviously you have to worry about brakes and stuff, although you do have the regenerative braking, so you probably have to worry about even that a lot less than normal. But so all those things mean, you know, you don't, especially for those who don't like doing maintenance and keeping up on all that kind of stuff and going to the dealership every, you know, couple of months or whatever, you know, this kind of gets rid of that hassle. And so that's another very appealing thing. And, you know, of course, with Kias, you also get the full tax credit of $7,500 too, which is something that you don't get anymore with Tesla, and you know, the Chevy Bolt, that's going away. There's a few others that, you know, still have it, but, you know, Kia's going to have it for several years to go here, and so that really makes it great. Now, they didn't announce pricing at the time that I've been filming this video, so I will add the pricing info to the description below whenever that becomes available, but, you know, it should be very similar to the pricing of the Kona EV, so you're talking mid $30,000 range, you know, depending on trim. Again, there's going to be the EX and the EX Premium, so there'll be a little bit of a variance there depending on how much equipment you have. And there are a couple nice things I didn't mention whenever I was talking about the interior of the EX Premium that you do get with that higher trim level. You get the heated steering wheel as part of that package. There's this mood lighting, which you can actually configure to different colors, which is very cool. And also you get the sunroof. That's also only in the EX Premium trim. But otherwise, you know, all the safety stuff for the most part is standard and everything. And it's just a really nice package all around. You know, you start with I mean, the Niros were all pretty nice, but, you know, start with a pretty high spec Niro to begin with, even on the base EV version, and then, you know, adding all these extra features makes it even nicer. But it's really fun in a different way. And, you know, I'm an enthusiast through and through. I love exhaust noises. I love all that type of, you know, fun drama, but this has it in a different way, because, you know, you drive a lot of even the sportier turbo 4-cylinders. A lot of them don't sound that great anymore, so I'm not really finding myself missing an exhaust note a whole lot. And so, you know, I'm really enjoying the additional G-forces of all the torque that's immediate. And I actually think that, you know, playing with these paddle shifters for the regenerative braking is really fun to maximize your efficiency, and the whole hypermiling thing is quite fun too when you're going down a downhill grade, to try and you know, feather the gas pedal lightly enough that you can actually build up range. All that type of stuff to me is actually fun, and it's entertaining, and makes even a boring highway drive a little more enjoyable, because you're always trying to maximize that range. And, you know, you're rolling on the miles, but the range, sometimes you can keep it so that it doesn't even go down. You can actually gain a couple miles of range by taking it easy and stuff. And so, you know, it's just been phenomenal. I mean, we've only used not even half of the range here. We've used about 100 miles of the 239 mile range. I have 132 miles here, and we've driven this vehicle 111 miles. So that goes to show that, you know, it was staying pretty true to that about 250 in real world driving here so far that we've been getting. And that's with a pretty conservative mix. There was some sporty driving, but it's cool how, you know, you can see your driving style on here and how it grades it out. I'm not sure the thresholds for how it grades it exactly, but, you know, it says I have 67% economical driving, 32% normal, and then 1% aggressive. So those aggressive bursts, you know, don't really have much of an effect on that range if you take it easy. Now, if you do put it into sport mode, that'll immediately change the range and bring it down to reflect that, you know, it's assuming you're going to stay in sport mode the whole rest of the battery. And so once you take it out of that sport mode, then you get some of that range back. So, but I'm really enjoying this a lot more than I even expected to. I think it's just very fascinating. It's a fresh new thing. You know, a lot of these, even in the sporty car segment, you know, it's kind of cookie cutter in some ways. And so I think this is really totally different and a new challenge and a new exciting thing for enthusiasts that I think would really enjoy if, again, you are open to the idea of getting rid of the engine sound pounds just having the EV. It's a lot of fun. 291 pound-feet of torque is never boring in something this size. So overall, I'm really impressed with the Niro EV, and they're going to be available here in the next few weeks for those states that do sell them. They're going to be selling them in about a dozen or so states, but you know, we'll be rolling it out, I'm sure, eventually to others. But in the meantime, it's fantastic and definitely worth considering, especially if you're interested in EVs. I think the packaging, the way they did the options, you know, the more familiarity with the Niro packaging, so it's not totally weird and different from all the other models. You know, it's just the same Niro that everyone's used to from the past couple of years, but now it's better with the EV. I think this is definitely the Niro I would pick. It's the most fun, has the most power. I think it looks a little cooler than the regular Niros as well. And overall, it's just a very compelling package. So anyway, huge thanks once again to Kia for providing me with this opportunity to review the Niro EV. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.